Alright, this next video I'm going to be working on essentially getting some of these dents out, but primarily going to be using a shrinking disc and doing some torch shrinking, just a little bit of that, since I'm not very good at it and I'm not so confident with how it would turn out. I started out with what I thought was the easy stuff, and we'll even do go into a little bit of torch shrinking right after that. So let's just get right into it. No fancy intros. Let's go. Alright, so what after doing some research, I have been learning that a shrinking disc is not a very good plan for removing a slight crown over a very large area. It's really meant for many little small high spots all over a panel. And so what I think is the more appropriate approach, but it's much more difficult and at least difficult for me and a little bit scary, is heat shrinking the panel. And so the reason I'm a little bit worried about that is because the panel, the warping in the panel is up in this top area here, but the access to the back of the panel is really limited to just kind of down here. And so I'm a little worried if I do something really bad up here, I'm not going to be able to get to it and fix it without cutting out the back of the inner fender and then hammering and dolling and doing a whole bunch of stuff like that. So I'd really like to avoid that. So I'm going to kind of be really careful. And I've even done a couple little experiments on here on how on heating with a torch and kind of tapping it down. It seems to work okay, but there's still a little bit of it creates a little bit of a ripply effect, and I'm not looking forward to, having a bunch of hot spots, 15 or 20 of those all along this panel just to hope to get it to straighten out. So I'm thinking what I might try is there's a little bit of a crown down here that I'd like to try with the shrinking disc just to see how much I can actually get it to move, and I'm going to even try and measure the crown with a ruler and kind of document what the gaps are on the right and the left side when I do that. And then I'll just really go to town on it with the shrinking disc and just see what happens. And if anything bad does really happen, I have access to the back of that panel, and I think I can probably straighten it out if it does. So that's what we're going to try. All right, let's go. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is try and measure the crown of this panel in a way that I can measure it multiple times over time to see if I'm getting any better or worse and things. So I've scribed a blue line across here where I think the damage is the worst, and so I'm going to kind of focus my effort in there. And the way I'm going to measure that, the panel is pretty flat here, and so I've got this straight edge flat all the way there, and I'm going to leave it the gap here, so that's kind of where the crown is. And I'm going to use a set of dial calipers to measure what that gap is, and it is 130 thousandths of an inch. So actually, how do you like that? Is dial calipers with an actual dial before they had digital stuff. I've had them a while, so it's kind of a vintage thing, but it never needs batteries, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, all right, so that's where it is now. So 140 thousandths, or what was it? 130 thousandths. Yeah, 130 thousandths. So we're gonna go to town with the shrinking disc just to see what happens. I don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna give it a try. And so maybe I should get a little closer just to see. Okay, so grinder on. All right, let's go. All right, so now the temperature test. It's actually not that hot. I'm wondering if that's hot enough. Let's see if I can measure the crown while it's hot and see if it actually even moves. Let's see. see. It is 165. So the crown definitely got bigger, which means it heated up. So let's see what it does when it cools down. Wow, 105. That's interesting. So it actually did shrink it down a little bit. I'm a little bit shocked, but impressed, and a little bit hopeful that maybe I don't have to use a torch on this. So I'm gonna see if I can get this flat first before I attempt to go up there. So it's definitely high here, and it does seem to be a little high there. So I may try and kind of get that area. All right, let's go for it. So 112 thousandths. So looks like it didn't do anything that time. So that's interesting. Let's see if I can figure out where the high spot has gone. That seems to be up here. This down here, kind of an inch below that line, is actually pretty good. There's maybe a bit of a high crown right here, so I may want to mark that there and see if I can get that, and then maybe focus more of my heat and energy up here. Definitely seems to be kind of right there. Seems to be a high spot, and if I press that in, well, kind of there. It's kind of right there. So let's try that. I'm not making it worse yet, so we'll keep going and see what. As long as it's not getting worse or getting slightly better, then I'll be happy. I don't know if you can see, but I've actually, as I've gotten up closer to the top, I can start to see some spots where the disc isn't hitting, which means that those are low spots. Those are too far in, and so I can come back around from behind the panel and maybe tap those out, assuming that this surface is where I want it, where it should be. And so, ooh, that's hot. So we'll let that cool down, and then we'll see. Yeah, you can kind of see there's some low spots all around here, where I was hammering in the previous, or one of the two previous videos, I was hammering this line in to get it to match up with this door line so that it was perfectly straight, and so it was kind of really pooched out here a good amount. And so there's some of those hammer marks. They're really they're subtle, but they're enough to show up on the disc. In fact, there's kind of a more noticeable spot here. Still hot. You gotta wait for the metal to cool all the way back down so that you don't measure it while it's hot, because when it's hot it's expanded, and so you gotta wait for it to cool down for it to shrink back to where it'd be normally, and where the temperature matches the rest of the panel. Suppose I should just lock it at 112, and we'll just see if we're smaller than 112. So from 112 to 110, I guess that's the right direction, but I don't quite trust that number being accurate. So I don't need any heat over here, kind of past the center. It looks like all the high spot is here, and so maybe we'll concentrate that here, and see maybe if we can even get. I wonder if that's high or low. Pretty sure that's low. I really do like how this shrinking disc just really smooths out any little imperfections. I mean, it won't do huge imperfections. You can kind of see. Let me get this close. You can kind of see, like right here, all this dark area is where the disc has been rubbing on the fender, and this light area is where it hasn't touched it. So I know that that little circular or whatever amoeba shaped area is a low spot along with this, and then some other little finer things here. And so there's kind of all these around here, and they kind of taper off to nothing over here. So what I'll have to do is come back behind that panel just and try and tap those out so that I can get when I get the shrinking disc up here, it'll kind of just smooth all those out. So that actually will look really nice. Now that we're cool, let's measure again. We'll see if we're over, what was it, 110 before? There's our line. I got 109. 109, really? Does it really measure that? Yeah, I'd say it's 109. So, I mean, it's going to be really slow, but maybe that's okay. Maybe I should, I'm starting to think that I should probably straighten out some of this stuff here and then keep shrinking, because it seems to be going the right direction. Alright, so I can still see that I got some of the low spots here. There's a little spot here, and there's a little spot here and here that are better. And even here I caught some new metal, but there's still a decent sized low spot there, here, and a couple really small spots here. Some of these are so subtle that I would bet if I had they may be so subtle that even primer would fill those. Primer and one block sanding. That's one important part. I'm not going to get this to a point where I don't have to block sand or do anything like that. The point is just to get enough of the dents and make it straight enough that where I can get a coat of filler primer on it, block sand it, and then paint it. Probably block sand it, reprime it to make sure everything's covered with primer, and then paint it. So that's the plan. Perfection is not the plan, but as close to perfection as I can get is the plan. So, yeah. Body line is still fairly straight. It's actually really straight. It's actually even better than it was, I think. This is cool. Let's measure it. Let's see. Just so we're documented. I'm going to leave it at 110. Let's see if we got any better. Looks like it's 104. So it actually has moved a little bit. So I'm impressed that it's moving. It's just going to be a really long drawn out process, I have a feeling here. So if this was only, you know, what was it, 150 or something out of, I may try just keeping shrinking this and see how close I can get it. I mean, it's really, down here it's tightened up. I mean, it's really it's a nice tight panel. So I can see I actually moved some metal. This little spot over here, I've cut some parts in the middle. This one down here started to fill in. And even here it looks a little more better. This spot still got a little bit of a low here. This is actually working better than I thought. You know, when they do it on, you know, if you watch Ray Chalene, he must have his panel really close to where it needs to be before he uses the shrinking disc, because man, he just seems like he just glides it over, you know, a few times and then takes it off and hey, it's all done. So it's much harder than that actually. So he must be a much better craftsman than I am, so that's not surprising. So see, he gets paid for doing it and I don't. So that's probably what the difference is. So, but I'm getting better at it. I would not be able to get the surface this smooth by, you know, hammer and dolly. So I'm impressed, and I can't wait for the 9-inch version to come in the mail so I can try it over a bigger surface area and get some more heat, so I don't have to do this 45 different times. We were at 9. We were at, what were we at? We were at 90 or something. Let's keep it at 90 and see if we're above or below. I think we are still close to 90. I might be convinced it's a little under, but it's only 3 digits, 3 decimal places that I can measure to, so it might be like 89 or something like that. So I think that's too close for me to call. So I'm gonna see if I can catch a few more of these with the hammer, like especially right there. There's some glazing putty here. There's a little dot here, and I may even try to pop that out a little bit more. Alright, so I measured again. We're at 78 thousandths, so that's pretty good. It's really slow going. I'm going to fix a couple more of these little low spot dents, and then we'll keep going. Alright, I'm back, and I've been shrinking with the shrinking disc for a long time. I got my 9-inch disc today in the mail, so I've been using it a little bit, and I have to say it has shrunk a lot. And let's see if I can measure. Oops. I lost my line because I've been polishing it so much, but my edge is straight here and it's straight on this side, so the gap that or the high spot that I was trying to get rid of is gone. The trouble is, I don't know if you can see on this ruler, is that I've now got a low spot. It's almost like I shrunk it too much, and it kind of, the low spot, center of the low spot kind of starts here and curves down here. So I'm obviously gonna have to go from the back and try and push that out. I just don't want to overdo it again and then have to shrink it again. So I've read that happens a little bit, is that sometimes when you shrink an area, the deformation kind of moves over to somewhere adjacent to it. So I guess that's not too surprising. It's just a little disappointing, but I'm gonna keep at it, because this is actually nearly perfect right up top near the body line. I don't think I can get any better than that. Well, maybe there's a little tiny spot that I could improve, but that low spot seems to just grow from here and kind of go down there. The low spot's it's at least a 1/16 of an inch. It's probably about a 1/16. So that's gonna have to come out a little bit. All right, so I'm done hammering and doling. I got I think all the shrinking done that I want to do. There might be a little spot right here that I'm thinking maybe, but I wanted to just check back in with. I lost my line, so I'm having trouble finding where it was, but it was right about here. And I am measuring the flatness at, see if I can get it right where I was doing it before. Right about 20 thousandths of an inch, so that's pretty good. I guess I'll have to measure how many sheets of paper that is. I'm gonna call that good enough for now. What I am seeing though is that since we're striving for as close to perfection as we can, this whole surface here starts to dive down towards the door as it gets to the door, and that's, I think, because there's a brace behind there that this is welded to, so it's not gonna come out anymore. But what I can do is that brace is kind of right along this edge, is I'd really like to maybe try and jam a screwdriver, a really thin screwdriver, even if I can open it up, get a shim in there just to pull it out just a little bit. So I don't know if that's insane or not, but I think I'd like to try. I mean, if I was like one of those super high-end custom car guys, that's what I would do. And so I think I'd like to learn if I can do that or not, or I'd like to learn if I can do that or not. So we're gonna try that. So getting that screwdriver in here, all it did was reach to about a 1/2 inch, and then any kind of pressure creates a little kink there. So that's not a very good idea. So I'm wondering if I can shrink a little bit of this area down to meet this level, so it's at least, if I'm not going to be totally straight all the way across, at least it'll be a little more subtle here. There won't be such a sharp divot there. So we're going to try the shrinker here. All right. It's pretty smooth, but I can still feel something going on there. Yeah, this panel just seems to dive in maybe a little less than 1/16 of an inch. Actually, it looks like almost a whole 1/16 of an inch, starting from an inch out, and it just kind of dives in. I don't know what to do about that. I guess the right way to be would drill out the, if I can see, am I gonna hit the camera if I go there? The right way to do that would drill out these welds along here and push this panel out so it's right where it needs to be. And that's probably what I need to do, and I'm kind of bummed about that. But this isn't all that perfect in here anyway, so it might make sense to, maybe I can kind of protect some of this paint here and just get that out. Because the whole purpose of this is learn how to do it right. So why give up? Why give up when you know what you need to do? So let's go. I probably should have started with that in the first place, but I actually didn't think I'd get this far, so I'm pretty happy so far. So we're gonna do that later. I think I'd like to get some of this stuff figured out first. All right, so I've got a bunch of different crowns here that I need to get rid of, but I think what I'm thinking is right about here is where is kind of the worst of it. So I'd like to start here, and I think that's what I'll do. This panel is pretty good where it is, and so I think it's time to start getting this closer. Because there's at least a 1/4 inch of crown in some of this spot. Let's see. Hey, that's actually a lot better. It's actually, if I just go here, I am probably down to a 1/16 of an inch right here. Actually a tiny bit more than a 1/16 here, and it just starts growing. So this is kind of where my next high spot is. So I think as long as nothing's getting worse, let's try this area right here. All right. So warm. It's definitely lower, but it's lower here, but it's also lower here. So I wonder. Yeah, I'm able to get an oil can there. It's not quite an oil can, but it's getting close to where it would buckle. All right, I've been using the shrinking disc on this a little bit. It gets some small, like where there's a localized high spot. It takes that down pretty nice and smooths it out, but it's not seeming. I mean, I suppose if I sat here for weeks and weeks and just constantly heated this up and cooled it down over and over and over again, I might be able to get it to shrink down enough, but it's still like an 1/8 of an inch kind of right here. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to torch shrink it, and that's essentially you heat up a tight spot pretty hot with the torch, and then when it's hot you tap it down with a guess as a hammer so that there's a low spot, and then you come back up from behind with a dolly, and then you tap around that spot. And what that does is it kind of squeezes the soft metal that's hot back into itself, so it increases the thickness of the sheet metal right in that spot, which shrinks the overall panel. And so that's the theory, and I've tried it in a couple spots, and it does shrink it. I mean, it shrinks it a lot, but it tends to, you know, focus it in an area, and so I don't want to get out of control where there's a spot where I can't get to it with a dolly. So this luckily seems to be the high spot, and I can get that to it, get that with a dolly. And so I'm hoping by shrinking this, I might be able to pull some of this high spot down from there. And so ideally I'd use a different torch than this, since you really want it to get really hot really fast and then cool down really fast. That way the hot metal that's expanding, you want the hot metal to be expanding into the cold metal, and that kind of causes the wall thickness, or the sheet metal wall thickness increase. And so double check it. Yeah, it's kind of right between those two circles there is where my high spot is. Alright, so let's go for it. Yep, that does it. Alright, so let's get this here. It's a little hot back there. Is that flat? Does look like it's flat, so let it cool down. So here we go again. That did shrink it down a bit. We're back to a little bit of a concave spot here, so we'll have to stretch that out again. But it looks like we'll have to stretch kind of this whole area out. I'm worried if I shrink too much more here, it's just going to make a giant low spot. Got a very clear high spot here too. This is getting up into an area where it's going to be hard to access. But let me see. Let's see if I can. Well, I can reach up there with my fingers, so if I can get up there with my fingers, I can reach the dolly upside. Maybe this other dolly. Yeah, we can do that. So let's shrink that one too. Let me make really sure where the center of that high spot is. I mean, it's probably right there. Alright, so we'll wait for it to cool down. And I've got a little bit of a low spot, so I'll have to I need to get the dolly in there and really take that back up. So let's measure it and see where we're at first, I suppose. Alright, it's better across there. It's not like there's not one pointy high spot anymore. It's more of a general slower crown. Alright, first major mistake. As I was trying to hammer and dolly out this low spot that was here, I decided to, maybe poorly, add a little heat so I could get the metal just to stretch a little bit more. I had been getting a dolly and hammering it, and it was stretching, but since there was already a low spot, it was stretching into the low spot, so it was kind of making it worse. And so I thought, well, I'm gonna have to get more pressure in the back and maybe even heat it up so that it so that the pressure that there will kind of stretch it back, so it would be a high spot again. But it looks like while I was putting pressure in there, I put a little too much pressure off to the side, and I got a big knot right there, and it looks like it. I don't know if you can. I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but hey, we gotta show our mistakes here, right? So let's see. Where's our... So I don't know if you can see that, but that is that little welt right there is leaving me at least a 1/4 inch on either side. And so the metal's definitely stretched, and so that's a good thing. But I'm gonna have to obviously hammer that back down. And so I suppose if I do it right, if I get my dolly over here and over here while I'm hammering in the center, I'm hoping that the amount that it stretched wasn't too much, and it's just enough to give me the outward crown that I want rather than an inward crown. And so one other thing I've been learning is that just banging on one side without having a dolly on the other, it just does not move metal very well. And I think what happens is that if you're hitting the metal, it's able, and it's not, you know, reinforced anywhere, it's able to move a lot and go back to where it was and take a lot of the energy out of your blow. And so I'm really starting to see why you almost always need to use a dolly on the backside, because you got force going one way, holding the metal in place while you're smacking it from the other direction. And it just helps to bend it. I think it concentrates the force and prevents it from being wasted just flexing the panel out. And so that's something that's something I've learned, and that's I think I'm going to try and keep doing that to make sure I don't goof this up anymore. I'm hitting, this whole panel moves instead of the dent moving, so you have to really hit it hard if you don't have a dolly in here to get it to move. And so I don't have that much space or energy back here to do that. So I wonder if I can kind of pry the get that dolly wedged in there, so at least I don't have to wedge my hand in there so often. Trying to decide if I'm still backwards from where I was or if I'm actually better than where I was. Well, it's not close. It's not enough to say. It's not enough to say that I'm any better, but it's not. I don't think it's any worse, so we're gonna still call it worse until we get some of this out of here. Hey, all right. We are ahead of the game finally, so that got me really worried. There's just a little bit of little highs and low spots here, but this panel is generally pretty flat all the way across. I am at easily less than a 1/16 of an inch. Actually, I think I'm a little low spot right there. We may try and put a tad bit of pressure there. We're low here, but high here. So I wonder if I put my dolly here and hammer down there. That may be what That may be what I need to do. Let's see. Get it all the way right on the weld. The weld joint. Alright, I'm gonna bang on this a little bit more and try and tweak it. If I do anything or make any other huge mistakes, I will turn the camera back on and